The neighborhood of Riverside Estates looked like every suburban dream on those glossy real estate brochures. Manicured lawns trimmed to the exact 2.5-inch HOA standard. American flags fluttering at the precise 3-foot height. And not a single mailbox painted the wrong shade of beige. But behind the white picket perfection lurked Karen Thompson, president of the Riverside Estates Homeowners Association for 8 brutal years. She wielded the rule book like a medieval torturer, fining residents for grass too tall, holiday lights left up 3 days past the deadline, or, God forbid, a garden gnome that dared to smile too widely. Everyone called her Karen behind her back, but to her face they smiled and nodded because crossing her meant letters. Lion. And endless compliance hearings. My name is Harold Mitchell, 72 years old, retired postal carrier, lived on Oak Street for 47 years. I used to be the guy who quietly paid the HOA dues on time, never complained, even volunteered to fix the community mailbox when the kids smashed it with baseballs. Then Karen decided I was a problem. First, it was a $250 fine for my lawn edging being 1/8 of an inch too rounded. Then another for my porch flagpole being non-compliant material. I paid them all without a word. But 6 months ago, I decided to run one last test on the woman who thought she owned the neighborhood. I told the board I had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 3 months to live. Doctor's orders. The whole heartbreaking package. Dr. Patricia Davis, my longtime friend, helped forge the perfect medical file, scans, chemo schedules, the works. The fake diagnosis hit Karen like a lottery ticket. Suddenly, my complaints about her selective enforcement disappeared from the agenda. She started smiling at me in that syrupy way people use when they're already measuring your house for their cousin's down payment. Tonight was the Riverside Estates annual summer gala. The big event where Karen handed out community spirit awards and reminded everyone how lucky they were to live under her benevolent dictatorship. I arrived in my 27-year-old Honda Civic, parked between the leased Range Rovers and financed Escalades. My phone buzzed, text from James Cooper, the private investigator I'd hired 6 months earlier, package ready. All exits covered. Confirm when you want the fireworks. I walked into the decorated pavilion wearing the same cheap suit I'd worn to every HOA meeting for a decade. Karen spotted me immediately. She glided over in a $2,800 pastel pantsuit, pearls gleaming, smile wide enough to swallow a small child. Harold, you made it. We weren't sure with the situation. She said the situation the same way she said code violation. Like it was something contagious she needed to quarantine. Wouldn't miss it, I answered quietly. She leaned in, voice dropping to that fake concern whisper she used on new residents. Listen, we're keeping things upbeat tonight for the photos. Maybe let's talk about the medical stuff? People are here to celebrate community. Translation: your impending death is bad for the Instagram aesthetic. I nodded like the grateful dying man she wanted me to be. Then came the seating chart. My name, Harold Mitchell, was taped to table 12, shoved in the back corner behind a fake palm tree, right next to the catering cruise break station. Table 1, center stage, held Karen, her husband, and the rest of the board. My table sat literally behind the pillar that blocked the view from the main crowd. The kind of spot you assign when you're ashamed to be seen with someone. I looked at Karen. She shrugged with theatrical helplessness. We thought it would be easier for you, Harold. Less walking with your situation. The catering staff are wonderful people. They won't mind. Maria, the 19-year-old server refilling water glasses, gave me an apologetic smile. She treated me with more basic human decency in 30 seconds than Karen had shown in 6 months. I sat down between Maria and Carlos, the assistant manager. They were real sweat on their brows. Tired feet, honest smiles. You the guy with the cancer? Maria asked gently. Must be hard. Beautiful night, though. I smiled back. It certainly cost enough, $23, $500 for this little party. I saw the invoice when Karen left it open on the community bulletin board. Across the room, Karen laughed with the board members, all of them eyeing my corner like I was already a ghost. They didn't know the real documents in my jacket pocket told a different story. My Vanguard statement, $3,742,890.43. 47 years of overtime. Skip vacations. Compound interest. While Karen thought I was just another broke old postal worker living on Social Security, I had quietly built something real. My phone buzzed again. James, board discussing your house. They think it'll go on the market by September. Karen already has a buyer lined up, her brother-in-law. I typed back, wait for my signal. Because tonight wasn't about money. It was about watching the people who claim to love community reveal exactly what they were when they thought the quiet old man had no power left. The gala kicked off with the usual HOA pomp. Karen took the microphone first, voice dripping honey. Welcome, neighbors. Another successful year under strong leadership. Polite applause. She went on about how the new fines had improved compliance by 43%. Translation: she'd squeeze more money out of people who just wanted to live in peace. I ate my salad, the wilted, clearly reheated portion that arrived 15 minutes after everyone else's fresh plates. Maria whispered, they gave special instructions for your table. Dietary restrictions or something. I hadn't requested any. Karen had. I caught her eye across the room and raised my water glass in a mock toast. She looked away fast, but not before I saw the irritation flash. The test had begun, and the board was already failing spectacularly. Dinner service turned into open comedy. The main course arrived for every table except mine. Carlos looked embarrassed as he checked his list twice. Excuse me. I called politely to the catering manager. I think table 12 was missed. The manager flushed. There was a note, something about light portions due to health. Karen materialized on my shoulder like a pastel ghost. All fake sweetness. Harold, we thought with the treatments you might not have much appetite. We didn't want to waste food. I'm hungry, I said simply, voice carrying just enough for the nearest tables to hear. Her smile twitched. Of course you are. Let's get you a small portion, something mild. She signaled frantically. I smiled back. Actually, I'll take the full course. Same as everyone else. The nearby conversations quieted. People were listening now. Harold, she hissed, leaning close. People are watching. Let's not make a scene. I'm not making a scene. I'm ordering dinner. For one delicious second her mask slipped, and I saw the real Karen. The woman who fined a widow $500 for planting red tulips instead of white. Fine. Whatever. But don't blame me if you can't finish it. She stalked back to table 1 where the board was deep in conversation about future property turnover opportunities. My phone vibrated. James, audio crystal clear. Facial recognition confirms 147 guests. Good. Let every witness see exactly how the dying man was treated at the community celebration he'd quietly helped fund for years. The salad finally arrived, limp lettuce that looked like it had been microwaved twice. I ate every bite slowly, maintaining eye contact with Karen across the pavilion. This is delicious, I told Maria loudly enough for 3 tables to hear. Very fresh. She winced. I'm sorry about the delay. Sir, there was confusion in the kitchen. No confusion, I replied. Just poor communication. During the entree, Karen's husband, some spineless insurance salesman, finally wandered over, drink in hand. Harold, Karen says you're being difficult about the food. I kept my voice even. I ordered the same meal everyone else paid for. He glanced around, lowering his tone. Come on, man. This whole night is stressful enough without you making it about your condition. He gestured vaguely at me, like I was a bad smell. People are supposed to be celebrating community, not thinking about. He stopped himself, but the word death hung in the air anyway. I looked at him the way I once looked at my son when he was 12 and lying. Are you embarrassed by me? His face reddened. No, of course not. Then why am I sitting behind a decorative palm tree with the catering staff? It's not like that. Karen thought you'd be more comfortable back here. More comfortable being hidden. The nearby tables had gone completely silent. I could feel the weight of 147 pairs of eyes. He shifted. You're being paranoid. The cancer is making you, he caught himself. I finished for him. Difficult? Impossible? Taking up space. His silence said everything. I pulled out my phone, opened a voice memo app I'd kept running since I arrived, and let him see the red recording icon. I'm cooperating. Sir, I'm sitting where you put me, eating what you're willing to serve me, and staying quiet about my medical situation because it makes people uncomfortable. I won't apologize for existing. Something in my tone made him step back. For the first time all night, he looked uncertain. Like the quiet old man he dismissed for 6 months might not be as powerless as advertised. Fine, he muttered. Do whatever you want. Just try not to ruin this for Karen. Okay. He walked away before I could answer. Try not to ruin this for Karen. My presence, my supposed impending death, was a threat to her perfect gala. I sent a quick text to Margaret Wells, my estate attorney of 25 years, Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2? Her reply was instant. Documents prepared. Waiting for your signal. Across the pavilion, Karen was whispering furiously to the board. They kept glancing my way with undisguised irritation. My second phone, the encrypted one James had given me, buzzed. Remote access to the event photographer's equipment confirmed. Every reaction saved. I watched Karen laugh at something her husband said, then gesture toward my table like I was a minor inconvenience. The same woman who had fined me $1,200 over the last 6 months for imaginary violations was now calculating how soon my house would be empty. She didn't know that inside my jacket, next to the fake medical records, sat the real Vanguard statement and the revocable community trust one had quietly established years ago. $3.7 million earmarked for HOA improvement upon my death. A trust she and the board had been salivating over in private conversations James had recorded. They thought my money was their future community center. Tonight, they were earning exactly how little of it they deserved. The toast began right after the main course. Karen stood first, champagne glass raised, pearls catching the fairy lights. Thank you all for being here to celebrate another successful year in Riverside Estates. Polite applause. This has been the most incredible gala yet, thanks to strong leadership and community spirit. She smiled at the board like they were royalty. I want to thank our families, well, our HOA family, for their support. Then came the part I'd been waiting for. She looked directly at my corner table. And, of course, Harold Mitchell. Harold has been present throughout this process. Present. Not helpful. Not supportive. Just present. We know this is a difficult time for everyone dealing with ongoing situations. But we're grateful Harold could make it tonight despite his limitations. Limitations. Terminal cancer had been reduced to an HOA euphemism. The applause was scattered and awkward. The kind you give when someone mentions an uncomfortable topic they wish would disappear. Karen raised her glass. So here's to community, both the one we're born into and the one we choose to build together. The family we choose, as opposed to the one we're stuck with. I raised my water glass along with everyone else, hands steady while hers trembled slightly from the weight of performing compassion in public. Then she made her way to my table. Several drinks in, composure slipping. Harold, she announced loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. I hope you're enjoying the gala. It's beautiful, I replied. She swayed. Good. I wanted to thank you for being so understanding about everything. The seating, the portion sizes, keeping things upbeat. Translation, thank you for not ruining my photo op with your death. I wouldn't want to overshadow your special night, I said mildly. Exactly. She beamed like I'd finally learned my place. She leaned closer. I could smell the champagne. Between us, I was worried you might get emotional or make people uncomfortable with all the medical talk. But you've been perfect, just sitting quietly, not drawing attention to yourself. It means so much, sitting quietly, like a well-behaved pet. She continued in what she thought was a whisper. Honestly, I'm glad we're having the gala now, while you can still be here. We almost postponed when we heard about your diagnosis. But then we thought, what if we wait and what if you don't make it? They had moved up their big community event to fit my death schedule. I managed to calm. That was very thoughtful. She nodded vigorously. It was actually my idea. I told the board Harold would want to see the community thriving before the end. Before the end. She was discussing my funeral like it was a scheduling conflict they'd successfully managed. I looked at her. Karen, can I ask you something? Of course. If I weren't sick, would I still be welcome at this gala? Or is my invitation based on sympathy? Her face cycled through confusion, discomfort, then something that looked like honesty. She glanced around, realizing several guests were now openly listening. When she spoke again, her voice carried clearly. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Harold, this isn't about you being sick. This is about you're not exactly the kind of neighbor we're trying to build here. Successful, forward-thinking people who contribute to each other's growth she gestured at me. Instead of just taking up space. The words landed like a slap. Taking up space. At the community gala. While supposedly dying of cancer. The silence around us was absolute. Even a band had stopped playing. Karen suddenly realized what she'd said and where she'd said it. Her eyes widened at the staring faces. I didn't mean that the way it came out. No, I said, standing slowly. I think it came out exactly right. For the first time all evening, every eye in the pavilion was on table 12. Margaret Wells appeared at my side, as if by magic, briefcase in hand, moving with the quiet authority of someone who had spent 30 years dismantling people like Karen in courtrooms. Harold, she said loudly enough for the nearest tables to hear, I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic from downtown was terrible. She opened the briefcase just enough for me to see the corner of the legal document. I brought what you asked for, both versions. Karen's face went pale. Attorney? What is this? Margaret smiled politely but coldly. Estate planning. Harold and I have been working together for quite some time. The crowd around us grew. Word spread like the fines Karen loved to issue. People were pulling out phones. Margaret consulted her papers. Shall I review the asset summary for the community? She didn't wait for permission. Revocable community trust established by Harold Mitchell. Current value $3,742,890.43. Previously earmarked for Riverside Estates improvements upon his passing. Gasps rippled through the pavilion. Karen swayed. That's impossible. He's a retired postal worker. 47 years of disciplined investing, I said quietly. Every overtime shift, every holiday worked. Compound interest is a powerful thing. I looked straight at Karen. While you were fining me for imaginary violations, I was quietly building the very community center you've been promising for years. Margaret continued. There's also the matter of the recent medical records. She handed Karen a single sheet. Clean bill of health. Dated yesterday. Karen stared like it was written in another language. No cancer, I said simply. The pavilion erupted in confused murmurs. But he's dying, he said, terminal. I looked at the 147 witnesses. 6 months ago, I told you I had 3 months to live. Tonight, I wanted to see how the people who claim to love community would treat a dying neighbor at their own gala. You failed. Karen's voice rose. Shrill. You lied to us? About dying? That's psychotic. I corrected her gently. It was a test of character. And you failed spectacularly. Margaret stepped forward. Perhaps this is the perfect time to discuss the trust options. Harold. She withdrew 2 documents. Option 1. The original trust, leaving the entire $3.7 million to Riverside Estates for community improvements. Karen reached for it like a drowning woman. Margaret held it back. Option 2. The revised trust reflecting Harold's experiences over the past 6 months. The entire amount goes to the American Cancer Society. The silence was deafening. Someone whispered, "Did she say 3.7 million?" Karen's husband grabbed her arm. "You can't do this. We made one mistake. I repeated. "You seated me with the catering staff. You served me reheated leftovers. You told me to stay quiet about my illness because it dampened your celebration. You publicly stated, 'I'm not the kind of neighbor you want in this community.' And you spent 6 months privately discussing how soon my house would be available for your brother-in-law." I pulled out my phone and hit play. Karen's own voice filled the pavilion through the speaker. "Once Harold is gone, we can finally get that property turned over. Prime lot for the new pool expansion." Gasps. Another clip. Her husband. "The timing is actually perfect for the Gala budget. His situation means less complaints about the fines." The crowd was visibly horrified. These weren't careless comments. They were evidence of an entire board treating a dying neighbor like a business opportunity. Karen lunged forward. Mascara starting to run. "You manipulated us. You recorded us." "I documented everything," I said calmly. 6 months of surveillance. Audio. Text messages where you calculated my death like it was a closing date. James Cooper stepped out of the crowd. He'd been posing as a guest all night. He held up a tablet showing footage of the board meeting where Karen laughed about finally getting rid of the old complainer. Margaret pointed to the signature line. "Harold, which version do you want filed?" I looked around at 147 witnesses who had just seen exactly how their community leaders treated the vulnerable. "File the revised trust." Karen screamed. "No, you can't." I signed with a steady hand. "It's done. The American Cancer Society will be very grateful for this donation." The pavilion was dead silent. Karen stood frozen, face twisted between rage and panic. "We'll sue. This isn't legal." Margaret smiled. "Actually, it's completely ironclad. Harold was mentally competent. We have witnesses, and the recordings make the reasoning crystal clear." I turned to Karen one last time. "If you had shown even basic human decency tonight, if you had treated a dying neighbor with dignity instead of calculating how to profit from his death, you would have had that community center. Instead, you chose fines over compassion, control over kindness." She was crying now, pearls bouncing with each sob. "Please, we can start over. We'll waive all your past fines." I shook my head. Character isn't something you change when the money appears. It's something you either have or you don't. I stood up. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this gala and for witnessing the results of a 6-month examination of community values." I looked straight at Karen. "The test is over. You failed, but that doesn't mean the rest of the neighborhood can't learn from it." I walked toward the exit with Margaret and James. Behind me, I could hear Karen screaming about lawyers and emergency board meetings. But it was too late. The revised trust was notarized, witnessed, and already being filed electronically. Tomorrow, the American Cancer Society would be $3.7 million richer, and Riverside Estates would wake up to a very different reality. The aftermath moved faster than any HOA violation notice Karen had ever issued. By Monday morning, the story had spread through the neighborhood group chat like wildfire. 147 Gala guests had witnessed the most spectacular trust reversal in local history, and they were talking. Margaret called me Tuesday. Karen retained a lawyer to contest the trust. They told her she has zero case. The recordings are devastating. I wasn't surprised. The financial consequences for Karen and the board were immediate. The gala had been funded partly by community reserves they'd expected to replenish with my trust money. Now, those reserves were gone, and the fines they collected from residents suddenly looked like extortion. 3 board members resigned by Wednesday. Karen's husband's insurance agency dropped her as a partner. Something about reputational risk. My phone started ringing Wednesday. Karen's voice. Shaky. Harold, we need to talk. The fines we can drop, every single one. I listened quietly. The pool expansion plans, we can name it after you. I let the silence stretch. Karen, this isn't about punishment. It's about consequences. For 47 years, I saved every penny so I could give back to the community I loved. You chose to see that community as something you controlled instead of something you served. Thursday brought more news. The local news station had picked up the story after James released selected clips, carefully edited to protect privacy, but damning enough. Karen tried to spin it as elder manipulation, but when the full audio of her saying I was taking up space aired, the comments exploded. This is why people hate HOAs. Karen finally got what she deserved. Her HOA presidency was put to an emergency vote. She lost 142-5. 6 months later, I received an invitation that actually surprised me. The dedication of the Harold Mitchell Cancer Research Wing at the county hospital. The American Cancer Society had used part of the donation to name an entire research laboratory after me. Dr. Patricia Davis met me before the ceremony. Harold, the grant is already funding 2 new clinical trials. Real patients. Real hope. I nodded. That's what matters. I noticed a familiar figure in the back of the crowd. Karen, standing alone. No pearls. No power suit. Just a woman who had lost everything she thought defined her. Our eyes met. She gave a small, broken nod. I nodded back. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition that the test was over. After the ceremony, a few former neighbors approached. We're rewriting the HOA bylaws, one said. No more selective enforcement. No more Karen-style fines. Another added quietly. We learned what real community looks like when we saw how you handled everything. I smiled. Sometimes the hardest tests are the ones we give ourselves. I walked out of the dedication into the afternoon sun. 47 years of quiet discipline had taught me patience. 6 months of pretending to die had taught me about character. And tomorrow, somewhere in a research lab, real patients fighting real cancer would benefit from money that had once been earmarked for a pool that would never be built. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your HOA president treated you like you were already dead? Sometimes the most expensive lesson isn't the money lost. It's the one the powerful learn when the quiet ones finally speak.